Hello, I'm Ed Gramlich with the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Welcome to Part 2 of Getting to Know the National Housing Trust Fund Law and Regulations. Part 2 is going to be talking about how the National Housing Trust Fund is focused on extremely low-income renters. In Part 2, we're going to be talking about the need for the National Housing Trust Fund. We're going to be talking about the formula for distributing the trust fund to the states. We're going to be talking about how it is really focused on renters and extremely low-income renters, and then we're going to talk very briefly about some tenant protection features. For those of you who were present in Part 1, these next 2 minutes will be a repeat, but it's important to build the case for what follows. There is a shortage of 7.1 million homes that are both affordable and available to extremely low-income renter households, and extremely low-income means income below 30% of the area median income. Another way of expressing that is that there are only 31 rental homes that are both affordable and available for every 100 extremely low-income renter households. And 75% of these households are spending more than 50% of their income on rent and utilities. They are severely cost burdened. Now, out of that 7.1 million, there's actually a national shortage of 3.4 million homes that are affordable and available to what we are calling deeply low-income renter households. These are households with incomes below 15% of the area median income. DLI is the term that the National Low Income Housing Coalition has made up. It's not an official HUD term. ELI is an official HUD term. And as you can see that there are only 17 rental homes affordable and available for every 100 DLI renter households, and 90% of those households are spending more than 50% of that very low income for rent and utilities. They are truly severely cost burdened. So that's all background to getting to the point about the formula. The National Housing Trust Fund is a block grant to the states. So how will the states get this money? The statute that created the trust fund set out 5 factors in the statute. 4 of those factors I'm going to be talking about. 2 of the factors are based on the shortage of rental housing that is both affordable and available to extremely low income and very low income households. Very low income households are those with incomes above 30% of the area median income, but below 50% of the area median income. Another 2 factors are based on the number of ELI and VLI renter households who are paying more than 50% of their income for rent and utilities. Again, severely cost-burdened households. The statute requires that the 2 factors that I just talked about, two of the 4 factors I just talked about, those that are based on extremely low-income households, those are supposed to get the priority in the formula. HUD took its cue from the statute, and HUD's interim regulation gives 75% of the weight for the entire formula to the 2 factors that are based on extremely low-income households. And those of you who are wondering about the 5th factor, it has to do with relative construction costs from state to state. So basically, the amount of money your state gets depends on the shortage of rental housing that's both affordable and available to extremely low-income people, and the extent to which extremely low-income renter households in your state are severely cost-burdened. I wanted to stress that. This is a very different kind of formula than other formulas that you might be familiar with, like CDBG Home, etc. The statute also has another feature. After this formula does all its cranking, the law requires that every state and the District of Columbia must get at least $3 million. And so if there's a particular state that, let's say, gets only $2.5 million, then the formula has to crank again, taking away a little bit of money from each of the states in the District of Columbia until that state that did not reach $3 million finally gets its $3 million. The interim rule anticipates the fact that in the first year or 2, there may not actually be enough money in the National Housing Trust Fund for every state and the District of Columbia to actually get $3 million. You might want to refer back to Part 1 about the dedicated sources of money and how much might be coming up in the next year or 2. So, in the event that there is not enough money in the trust fund in any given year for every state in the District of Columbia to get $3 million, HUD will issue a suggestion in the Federal Register, seek comments about how it can fairly distribute whatever money is available to the states. So be on the lookout for that, perhaps in the year 2016. And this is just a hypothetical chart based on a hypothetical $250 million in the trust fund. You probably can't read all of that, but 28 of those states are getting the minimum of $3 million. And keep touch with our website, and we'll update this when we know a little bit more about how much money is actually in the trust fund. Now, the trust fund is focused on renters, as was suggested by my discussion about the formula. The law goes even further. In addition, the law creating the trust fund requires that at least 90% of a state's trust fund money must be used to produce, preserve, rehabilitate, or operate rental housing. 90% must go to rental housing. The statute says that up to 10% may, but doesn't have to, go to homeowner-related activities. Now, I'm saying 90%. Those of you who will read the preamble to the interim regulations, and undoubtedly you will see in HUD guidance coming out in the future, HUD will say 80%. I say 90%. It's our interpretations of the regulations, but I just want to make you aware of that. In addition to a focus on renters, the law is focused on extremely low-income renters. So the law also requires that at least 75% of the state's trust fund money that is used for rental housing, that 90% that I just got done talking about, 75% of that money must be used to benefit households with incomes below 30% of the area median income or below the poverty level, whichever is greater. The law also limits to 25% the amount of a state's trust fund money that's used for rental housing that may be used to benefit very low-income households. Those are households with incomes below 50% of the area median income, but above 30% of the area median income. So this targeting of the National Housing Trust Fund is very different. It's very focused on extremely low-income and to some extent very low-income households. Very different from the CDBG program, the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit program, and the HOME program. The interim regulation introduces a new concept, a $1 billion threshold. Again, I think HUD was probably anticipating that in the first year or two, there would not be all that much money in the trust fund. So in any given year in which there's less than $1 billion available for the trust fund, then 100% of a state's trust fund allocation, both rental housing and homeowner housing, must benefit extremely low-income households. And finally, I'm just going to touch upon a few tenant protection features that are in the regulations that we're talking about renter households. Renters must be given a written lease that's for at least 1 year. Tenants can only be evicted for good cause. And the owner of a trust fund assisted property must comply with a grantee's, a state's, or local government's affirmative marketing requirements. And here's an important one. Such an owner may not exclude an applicant who has a Section 8 voucher or a home TBRA certificate. So this is a source of income protection that exists in the trust fund program. And finally, the owner must select tenants from a written waiting list, preferably a waiting list that is in chronological order. So that concludes part 2 of this series. Look for more information as the months roll on our website. Check HUD's website periodically to see what kind of guidance they are issuing. By all means, feel free to contact me with questions, suggestions, so that we can influence the final regulations in a couple of years. And if you're not already a member of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, please consider becoming a member. Thank you, and I hope you check out parts 3, 4, and 5.